I hope that's the case.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Barafaldi, can I get a thumbs up for volume? Excellent. All right, thanks for
I can hear you.
Ooh, we can hear you too much. All right. Hello. Thanks for coming out in a short week. What I kind of want to do, we've talked about a lot of grants that either different nonprofits have been applying for, or the county. I thought it'd be helpful to kind of see them all in one place, see where we're at with them, and then see what's coming up. It's never too early to start planning for the next round of grants.
Thank you.
So hopefully everybody can see this. Dan, if you don't see something that says grants pipeline, can you say so? Because now I can't see you. Or if you do see it, you can.
Let me
You do not see it?
There's nothing on the shared screen, if that's what you mean. If you mean, can I see the TV behind your head? Then the answer is sort of.
Yeah, I don't want to use that one. Ooh. I don't know if this is going to work on this computer. All right.
Is it a different computer?
No. I've had this problem with sharing documents here before. It's the Mac.
A little arrow to the right, click share.
I'm going to go like that. I don't know if that will help. So this isn't really much to look at for the people that are online. So if you can't see it, it's not the end of the world. I can also post this later. So this is our grants pipeline. Anything in green is something that we've actually already been awarded, and we is kind of a holistic global term here. What's in yellow is something that's already been sent in, we haven't heard back from yet, and then what's in blue are upcoming grant applications that are due by the end of this year. So for green, hopefully everyone knows that we got $2 million for the Plus One EDU program. That's underway. RUPCO has already received a number of applications from Columbia County residents.
Oh, good.
And I've had a lot of conversations with
Say
folks
that
who are
again,
interested.
please.
Oh, RUPCO's had a bunch of applications already. I don't know what the number is, but some have started to come in. It's still within the first really 4 weeks of this program being live. People have 3 more months and a week, about 13 more weeks to apply. I do want to circle back to that in a bit. The next 2 are Trillium specific grants. There's a state program that was this year? No, last year was the first year that it was new. It's the community controlled affordable housing grants. This is really for things like co-ops, limited equity partnerships, things like that.
Chris, you either got to get that thing up on the screen or you got to slow down speaking a little bit because I can't navigate both.
You're trying to take notes?
Well, I'm trying to understand what you're saying, and if I can't read it, then you got to talk slower.
Yeah, it won't share for some reason. I'll slow down. I feel like that's an evergreen comment. So last year, Trillium won a $20,000 grant from HCR basically for startup and capacity building. That was used for legal services for the most part, setting up a 501c3, which Trillium received since our last meeting.
Congratulations.
I know it was August 14th because I was speaking to the Board of Supervisors. I think when I got the text that we got our 501c3 status. And very recently, just a couple of days ago, Trillium was notified that it won a $70,000 grant. Same program, they split it up into planning and implementation. So this is obviously a much larger grant. This can be used to further your capacity building. Trillium is working with Hudson River Housing on developing some tools to evaluate properties for potential acquisition and what you can build on those properties. The other one that we've already won, again, we is global. So this was the Land Bank Phase 1 Administrative Grant. This is $100,000 for admin services, pre-development, legal services, professional contracts, things of that nature. The last piece of paperwork standing between us and getting that money was getting a employee identification number from the IRS. We got that late last week. So now we can enter into a contract with, the land bank can enter into a contract with HCR for that $100,000 of admin funds. So those are all the ones that we've won already.
Did you mean to have something after pre-development? It says pre-development and.
Oh, pre-development professional services.
Okay.
The yellow one in the middle there by itself is the Community Development Block Grant, Community Planning Grant. That application was sent in at the very end of July. Awards have not been announced yet for CDBG, and I don't know when they will be. It's in their NOFA, they don't list, in their notice of financial availability, or funding availability, excuse me. They don't actually have an award date, even a tentative one, which is a little bit odd as far as state programs go, but I think that's pretty par for the course for CDBG. That grant, we requested $50,000 for an existing housing conditions survey. It's what they call a windshield survey. So a consultant would literally drive around, usually 4 to 5 places throughout the county, and get an idea of, okay, what does your physical housing stock look like? There are 2 ideas there. One, we just need that. It's a gap in our knowledge. We have a lot of housing studies and a lot of data, but we don't really have existing conditions kind of in black and white. And the other piece of that was sort of get our foot in the door as a county with CDBG, or back in the door. It's been a while since the county has applied to CDBG for anything. So we're reestablishing that connection, but this survey, should we win this grant, that survey will inform next year's application to the state under the CDBG program, and that would be for single and multifamily rehabs.
Wow.
And I'll actually get to that.
Okay, great. Chris, with $50,000, how much of the county can you survey?
Typically, so I talked to a consultant who would potentially respond to an RFP. So it's kind of a real high level conversation. That consultant is doing pretty much the exact same work using the same grant funds for Schoharie County. So they go out and do, they call it 4 subregions, and that's kind of their minimum to be able to extrapolate from there. Okay, the rest of the county is, give or take, this is where you're coming in at for your housing conditions.
So that would be mostly just trends and that kind of thing, not specific properties that are ready for redevelopment, right?
Yeah, it's going to be more of a high level, kind of a look at, I think what they're going to do is categorize properties by here are the physical conditions that they're in, and then sort of extrapolate that outwards, that when we're applying for rehabs, we can say, we think ballpark, there are X amount of properties in this shape, Y amount of properties in this shape. You can figure out your scopes from there. Do you have a question?
That type of, yeah, I was wondering what exactly you get from this. And is it like a report or?
Yeah. So it'll be an inventory. And again, because it's your ballparking for, there's 32,000 structures in Columbia County, and they're going to get to 10% of them probably. So it just gives you a ballpark estimate of here's, you've got this many properties at this stage of conditions, this many properties at this stage, and then we'll kind of know how much we should be applying for the rehab grants. But we'll actually know how many properties we want to try to touch.
I mean, it doesn't like say 371 Pratt Hill Road.
Yeah, it's not gonna get. Yeah, it shouldn't get that.
I thought maybe I'd be eligible for some grant money.
But it also makes us more competitive because we have some data to draw from.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. I just wonder what we got. I don't.
That one is. I think I've got that next screen with the actual rehab grants report, because I have upcoming grants after this. So immediately upcoming are this sort of tranche of grants in the blue. Some of these I'm currently working on. The top one should go in the yellow. I already applied for that. So
The mobile and manufacturing?
yeah, so there's 2 of those programs. There's one that's just at the state. It's called the Mobile and Manufactured Home Replacement Program. That one's a little bit smaller. That was one that we weren't sure if we were going to apply for, because with this program, you have to own the land underneath to be eligible. That might change. Unfortunately, it didn't change before the grant was due. There's actually legislation on the governor's desk in her stack of housing paperwork that she needs to sign, hopefully soon, with the short-term rental regulation there as well, or short-term hotel occupancy tax. This one, the most you could apply for was $750,000. You can use $200 per subrecipient. So you could do at most really 3 replacements. So we just applied for the 600. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, yours is important.
No, it's not. It is, but yours is.
That's more curiosity, but as far as the removal of the mobile homes, first of all, where do they go? And is there like a price per mobile home for removal? Because I noticed that's a line item on both.
Yeah, it depends, right? Is always the answer. They'll just go to a landfill for the most part. There are some, you don't get a lot of salvagers of manufactured homes, just the materials aren't really worth anything once the property's demolished. So they'll go to a landfill somewhere.
Do we have similar asbestos problems with mobile or manufactured homes that we had with homes that were constructed in that period?
Yeah, and most of the, I think something like 40%, I don't remember this from the grant application, but that sounds right. About 40% of the manufactured homes in the county were constructed prior to the HUD regulations that now oversee all manufactured home construction. Those are the ones that I think are probably going to be in the worst shape. Again, we're not sure. So right now, this program can't be used in manufactured home communities. It can only be used where somebody has an individual manufactured home on a lot they own. We happen to have quite a few of those in the county, so finding 3 shouldn't be too difficult.
So is that gonna be both? So one should go up to the yellow because you already.
That one should go to the.
The 1.7, same thing,
No, that is due next Thursday.
but same provision.
It's lighter,
That one can be used in communities.
right?
Well, I say that because I did receive a call from somebody very interested. They bought some that are not livable.
Okay.
And we're thinking about, and I directed them here, we can talk offline, but this would fit perfect with that opportunity to replace and then be a low income rent.
Yeah, we'll have to, I mean, there's some eligibility requirements.
Okay.
Just before we move to the second one, the home funds, the first one, the 600,000, is that the program that's typically undersubscribed?
Both of these are typically undersubscribed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would mean as the restrictions, the ownership restriction is lifted, they might also lift the grant ceiling. We might be able to get more money next year, or?
It's possible. I wouldn't hold out hope for that.
Okay, no, but sometimes.
That
If
would
you're
be,
changing the rules, you should
That would be
change the acquisition.
What year did those HEC?
1974.
Okay, so was that early?
It was quite a while ago.
So are any of these that are gonna be replaced still have asbestos in them, and they could be?
We don't know what units are going to be
But
replaced yet.
the asbestos requirements, removal requirements are much less on an owner than they would be on a developer. So if the homeowner decides to do it, it's much easier to dispose of the asbestos. I know that through another organization I worked for.
And then there's a similarly named program that's available through Home, which is part of the slate of programs that HDR manages. Home is actually about 12 different programs. This one is essentially the same thing, but a much higher ask amount. So you can ask for 1.7, which is what we're going to request. Sub-recipients can receive up to $170,000, so you're talking about 10 units. And this program can be used in manufactured home communities. We've been in conversation with a couple. And then for both of those programs, both replacement programs, we would need a nonprofit partner, and we're going to partner with the Rural Preservation Company for Columbia County, which is Galvin. We will also partner with them on this next program. So this is the vacant rental improvement program. We talked about this a little bit. Just to go over it again, this is due October. The vacant rental improvement program.
You may know it as VRIP.
Yeah, AKA VRIP. I don't think they're ever going to make that happen. I don't understand the hyphen. But that's real. I didn't put that there. They have the hyphen. So this program is due October 3rd. The application is due. You can request up to, I believe this one is a cap of $3 million. I'd have to review that. But this is rehab grants for current owners of vacant residential units, or if you're an owner of a commercial building or even an industrial building, you could convert, if it's vacant, you could convert that to residential units. Any one building can't have more than 5 units in it when you're done. Individual landlords cannot own more than 20 units. So this is for, in the state's words, mom and pop landlords. They're really looking for people that just have a house or a space in a house. Sometimes if it's a 2-family home, and that one you can get $50,000 of rehab per unit if you rent to people at 80% of AMI. You can get $75,000 per unit if you rent to people at 60% of AMI. And we're also looking at partnering that with some of the land bank capital funding. I asked Hudson Community Renewal if they would be comfortable with, since land banks are basically built to return vacant properties to productive use, would they be comfortable with leveraging the VRIP program with land bank funds? They're very comfortable with it. They expected that question. So we're trying to The staging of that is a little bit tricky because the VRIP is due October 3rd. Say it takes 6 weeks for them to get around to announcing awards, that puts you at mid-November. And then the deadline for the land bank capital funding application is the end of this year.
Do you need to identify specific programs for VRIP or just apply for funding in general to be dispersed?
Specific properties?
Yeah.
You can just go in and say, we estimate we're going to do X amount of properties, right? And figure out your ask from that. We are shamelessly stealing an idea from the Essex County Land Bank. They are actually the applicants for this program in their area. And they put up kind of a pre-screening survey of sorts on their website. So they basically put all the eligibility questions on their website and are directing landlords to it to fill it out. So
if you have existing private owned vacant rental properties, which I think I've got a couple in Copic or one I know of and another about to be possibly. You're not, I mean, you would take those, right? They don't have to go through the land bank. Do you need a
No.
nonprofit partner otherwise in
A
that?
nonprofit has to apply because this is a local program administration program. So basically, the way this will work is Galvin would apply to the state, to HDR,
Okay,
to create the local program.
okay,
So say they ask for $5 million, just to ballpark it. So there would then be a fund of $5 million that private landlords would apply to Galvin to access those funds.
mhm,
The way we're trying to pitch for the land bank side, and we still have to have this conversation, I think, a little more in depth at the land bank level. If you qualify for that program, if you qualify for VRIP under Galvin's local program,
mhm.
you also qualify for a land bank program that can leverage a certain amount of
Because
money.
$50,000 doesn't go very far, right?
Yeah, 50
right.
grand's not a lot.
Right, right. So it's unlike the program that you and I emailed about earlier today, the small
The city,
rental improvement program, which is like 175,000.
that's much higher per year.
Got it, okay.
Can we stay on this for just a second? The 50K, if you rent it out for 80% of AMI, for how long is that? And is there an actual rental amount associated with that? Is it 30% of 80% of AMI, or what is it?
I believe it's a 10-year period of affordability, Dan.
Okay,
Yeah, and then I'm not sure if that program has the no more than 30% of a person's income baked in, or if they just say, so it wouldn't be a specific tenant, right? They would just say, okay, this is 80% of AMI in your county for us. That means that your rents would be capped at this amount. So they would basically do the math for you up front. So that might mean you got somebody who's making, 72% of AMI, and if a landlord comes in at 30% of 80%, that person is likely to still have some sort of housing cost burden. So I've got to get into the weeds with HDR about that one.
thank you.
So are we gonna be working in tandem with Galvin to decide how much to apply for? Who decides how much we apply for?
So I think it's
We,
going
the
to be,
big group now.
yeah, I think a combination of that is going to be, I don't know how many, you've got to try to figure out, okay, there's some people that are going to want the 50 so that they get the higher rent on the back end. Some folks are going to want the 75 just for extra affordability, or maybe they just need the 75. So you might say maybe we split the difference, or maybe you say 70% of them will do the 50, 30% will do the 75. I think that the pre-screening questionnaire that we have up on our website will be able to capture some of those folks, and then you can kind of extrapolate out from there. I do want to talk to specifically folks in the building departments in the towns and the villages, just get a sense of, hey, how many vacant properties do you have that you know of that just need like a little bit of help? They're not, full gut rehabs, they're not tear downs. What do you have in your town that, just back in the knack of math, you think that this program would work for those particular landlords?
And if a property's never been rented before, if it's always been owner occupied, but now it looks like it's being developed to be rented, that would also be eligible.
Yeah, I believe that should be eligible. One of the big questions is how long can a property have been vacant for, right?
Right.
So if this program comes out, can a landlord just evict some people and then 2 months later apply for the
No,
program?
I'm thinking of a building that's been sitting there with the weather, everything, it has the insulation on the outside, but it hasn't been sided for 3 years.
Yeah, it's just got
So-
a tieback or something.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So Chris, if somebody was interested in using these funds, do I tell him it's being applied for now by Galvin? So you gotta wait and see if it's awarded.
Right.
And where is the information on whose website about, owner questionnaires for possible uses?
We will have it up on our website on Monday.
On Monday,
So-
our website being CEDC.
CEDC, yes.
Okay.
But wouldn't the more practical thing be to say that we're applying for it and to stay in touch or to get on the list and we'll notify you?
Yep, yeah, all that's on.
Because then it'd be great to be able to get back to something and say, okay, it's active, it's running, apply now.
Yeah, so you'll basically create a contact list just from the
right.
survey, but then we'll obviously do a mailer, should we receive the fund, we'll do a mailer, a much bigger marketing campaign.
And I think I asked you if we had the ADU +1 flyer without the meeting date on it.
Oh, yes.
You could send me that, because I'm holding the newsletter for that.
Do you have a question, Helen?
Yes, I wanted to know if in the new program, if the building owner, if the building can be owned by a not-for-profit, and or the municipality, or if it has to be a private landlord.
Don't think municipally owned properties, nonprofits can apply, but you have to be a nonprofit that still hits that below 20 units owned threshold.
Like a not-for-profit who's a not-for-profit developer?
Yeah.
Like a Habitat?
But they do rentals, so, but
Right.
yes, but yeah, nonprofits.
Some Habitats do, actually.
Yeah, ours, I don't think,
Ours does.
ours is not.
And there's no income limitation on the property owner, correct?
Don't think there is for that program, Dan, but let me double check that.
I mean, it would make sense that it wasn't if they're targeting landlords who own some properties but not 20.
It's hard to do it on both sides, of both the owner and the tenant.
Right.
Yeah, it's too tight.
It's the AD program all over again.
That's exactly right, Brenda. It's too tight.
Okay, and then the last one on here is Land Bank Phase 1 Capital. That's your basic operating funds for a land bank aside from your administrative things. So that's, acquisitions, rehabilitations, demolitions, basically all the work that you would typically do as a purveyor of properties. And that is due by the end of this year. So whether or not the VRIP gets awarded will determine how the land bank budget gets written. But I've already started to do some of it, just if we get it or not.
More is better.
Yes, more is definitely better.
And did you say how
So,
much that one was?
There's no cap on that one. And I don't know what we're gonna apply for yet, because if we get the vacant rental improvement program, we'll apply for more than we would have if we didn't. So that one's kind of pending. But
Okay.
I have to get most of it done because I think there's gonna be like a 6-week window between finding out if we got VRIP and when the land bank budget is due, or land bank application. So look ahead to next year, because it's never too soon to start thinking about money. The CERDI program, the Small Rental Development Initiative, this is huge for rural areas. Mike Borges, the Executive Director of the Rural Housing Coalition, has done a great job with his organization of getting the state to fund this year after year, and also to keep it from reducing funding was actually increased this year, a tiny amount. It went from 7 million to a little over 8. So tiny amount, but it's still about a 14-point-something% increase. So I imagine this will come back again around the same time next year, which is April or May. It's on its own cycle. It kind of exists outside of the rest of the housing grants. But you can get up to $2 million, and this is project specific. So you can get up to $2 million, and it's for anything between 4 and 20 units, so this program was built specifically for that size development, just because anything smaller than 20 units, it's almost impossible to find any kind of public funding for it. So this was specifically built or specifically designed with that in mind. So I imagine that will come out next April, May. So it's never too soon to start looking for potential projects that could benefit from those funds. The Community Development Block Grant Housing Rehab is step 2 after the planning grant and the survey. So that is both.
Repeat the title, please, Chris. A little slower, maybe. Thank you.
CDBG Housing Rehabilitation. CDBG is Community Development Block Grant.
Thank you.
So that'll be due most likely June or July of next year. This is rehabilitation of both just single-family homes and also multifamily homes. The maximum award is $750,000, even if you're applying as a county, which is pretty low.
We might need one of those grants we have here.
I know, we did some noise reduction. So that's one that we'll apply for next year. The hope is that by the time this is due, if we have won the planning grant award, that will be well on its way to being mostly complete. So that we'll be able to use that information to inform the application to the housing rehabs.
Just before you move in, is the first one the one that you were talking about, the small?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Is that,
yeah, that's the one that has a fairly high, in the 100,000+ per unit
Pretty good.
subsidy.
and is that something, that first one, that towns can apply for? Who applies for it?
Sir, you need a nonprofit lead. There can be partnered applications, but you need a nonprofit lead applicant on that. That might be nonprofit. That might be private as well.
Right, you need a nonprofit, I was looking at the requirements for it. You need a nonprofit, but they say joint ventures are encouraged in order to, with private developers, in order to increase development capacity, quote unquote. So, who would be, if you had a private party that owned property was willing to actually turn it over to a nonprofit, who would be a good nonprofit, do you think, in this area for a development program of that size?
So we've got the three, right? There's Galvin,
Uh-huh.
there's Rucko, and there's
Right.
Hudson River Housing. Those
Right.
are the three most obvious
Right.
candidates.
Right. But I know that the large, certainly Repco had said they weren't interested in anything of that size. So,
Hudson River, if you don't mind,
Yeah, go ahead.
right,
Hudson River Housing
mhm,
is doing smaller things.
They are. okay,
Something, so they're able to get grant money for smaller
okay.
projects.
Could you form your own nonprofit, an HDFC, for a specific project in conjunction with a for-profit developer? That's a model that they've used in the Hudson Valley and in Westchester.
The only thing that I think might preclude that, and I'd have to look at the RFA from last year again, the request for applications. They often, when there's a nonprofit, when they list nonprofits as eligible lead applicants, they also usually ask that that nonprofit has at least 1 year of experience serving the community in some housing or / community development related capacity. That's part of the reason why CEDC isn't the applicant for many of these grants. We just don't have that kind of experience. So yeah, forming a brand new nonprofit for that program, if they've got that experience requirement, that is the one thing that would preclude them.
There were two other not-for-profits that used to be in housing. One was affiliated with the Lutheran Church called Thrivent. Are they still alive and well? I know they were not doing housing development in Dutchess County. And there was another, I see Janice is on the phone, on the screen, maybe she remembers. There was another one that John Livingston used to work for, not Housing Together, but Housing something. And they used to do renovations and small development projects. I'll see if I can get the name for it.
Thrive It was the first.
Thrivent, yeah, it's a Lutheran, not-for-profit, it's associated with the Lutheran Church. They were vibrant partners with Habitat 10, 15 years ago, both in terms of volunteers, but also funding. They had a national bucket of money.
Okay.
There's also the same the organization I was talking about, Housing Action Council. It's out of Tarrytown, but it's been working for 50 years and more recently up and down the Hudson Valley. It's really terrific.
Yeah, I think, oh no, I'm not gonna remember her name. Tiffany Zazula? Is that how you say her
Oh,
name?
yeah,
I think she's on there. She's from Pace.
From Pace.
Yeah, she's working with Philmont right now.
Primarily Rose Noonan. And Rose and Tiffany. Tiffany is part of the law school. What's a Pace organization?
Law Center.
So that's-
I'm a planning county there.
Yeah.
So the last one on this slide is, so next year's CFAs, which are consolidated funding applications. I'm getting better about, if I don't slow down, I'm at least explaining what all these initialisms are. So the consolidated funding applications come out every year through Empire State Development. This year was the first year that they had specific grant programs that were locked behind pro-housing community status. The pro-housing capital improvement program is kind of the bigger of, well, there are two pieces to this, but there's, of course, this particular program can be used for a variety of things. It can't be used for 100% housing projects. It's got to at least be a mixed use project. Pretty big awards, but it does have a 50% match requirement, which is difficult when you're at the upper end of the award categories here. But $3 million is the max, and I think it goes as small as $500,000, maybe $100,000. So there's a pretty big range. There's a lot that can be done with this money. But this is one of these things you want to have, and I think this is why it makes sense to start thinking about some of these this early. This is one of these programs they really want you to have a project in place, and then you apply to basically get the gap financing that you need, or just the finance that you need to make it happen. But you don't apply for this, then think about, oh, what project could we use for this funds? You've got to have a project in place prior to the application.
Do you know why it's tied in with mixed use commercial stuff? Because I'm thinking of a little town like ours that is in desperate need of housing, but not so much, mixed use.
I think there's
I think probably because it's ESD.
It's ESD,
rather
that's
than,
exactly
than
why.
HCR.
Yeah, so all the CFAs are under Empire State Development's wheelhouse, basically it's in their bucket. Empire State Development is the economic development arm of the state. So their programs are always going to be economic development focused. Even the land banks are under ESD. Or at least creating a land bank is under ESD. The management of it is under Homes and Community Renewal. But anything that comes out of ESD is going to have an economic development focus.
Yeah, because it just seems like, our town really scurried to get that pro-housing designation, hoping that we get help with housing. And so far, the only thing that seems in the pipeline is commercial.
Yeah, this is kind of the first slate of programs to be announced, so I expect there will be more. The state did retroactively include language about pro-housing status in all of their applications that I've looked at this year. So even if it's not locked behind a requirement to be pro-housing, this is really the only one that's locked behind the requirement right now. That's new. Many of the older programs that there was no reference made about pro-housing prior to them being released this year now have scoring criteria. So it might not be a requirement, but you are going to lose points if you're not a pro-housing requirement.
Chris, did anyone apply for this pro-housing capital improvement this cycle?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
And many CFAs, I wouldn't say they flow through CEDC's offices, but we are very often asked to write like letters of support for projects. And we didn't see any for this.
I think it was so new.
It was so new.
And the window was very short, very
It's like
short
a
window.
20-day window.
Yeah, the window is
And
tiny.
most people won't have a project sitting on.
Chris, all
their-
these have the restriction of who you can rent to, or not?
No, because the CDB, so the housing, well, the multifamily, yes. So the CDBG housing rehab multifamily does.
And is it
Single
for,
family is for homeowners.
is it forever, or are these?
It depends on the level of subsidy. So CDBG, and correct me if I'm wrong, is 5, 10, and 15-year periods of affordability based on the subsidy amount. Well, you're just doing owner stuff, right? Yeah.
Folks, I'm picking up 3 different conversations. I'm wondering if we can remember we have some folks online.
All right, so
Cause you've got 20 extra, 20.
speaking of tight windows, so here's one that is currently available that we are not going to apply for this year, but I wanted to talk about it anyway. It's also called Pro Housing. This one is from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Pro Housing, for them, the Pro stands for proactively removing obstacles to housing. It's very cute. This is due October 15th. The reason that we're not going to apply for it this year, 2 reasons. One is largely timing based. So this was announced about 2 weeks ago. It requires a public hearing, which the next opportunity for that would be next Wednesday. But it also requires that you leave your application up for the public to view and make comments on for 15 days prior to submission, which means the latest an application could be done is September 30th. It's really competitive, and I don't think we'd be able to put something together that wasn't in some way embarrassing to me personally and professionally in that window. but it's incredibly flexible. This is the second year of it. Last year, they made 21 awards. This round, they expect to make 30 awards. They increased the full pool of money available from $85 million to $100 million. When this first came out last year, I thought this would be for, mostly for larger areas, big cities, metropolitan regions. There are some pretty small awardees from last year. The example that I used, because it was the smallest one, this little tiny city in Idaho that's got 3,500 people won $2.5 million. The state of New York applied for this last year and didn't get it.
To remove what obstacles?
So some of it is zoning changes, a lot of it is policy based, but this money can be used for anything. You can use it for new infrastructure, improvements to infrastructure, expansions of infrastructure. You can use it for acquisition, which federal funds, that's pretty rare. You can use it for new construction. You can use it to set up a housing trust fund. It's got a pretty wide range of wide array of eligible uses. So I think this is something I talked to Supervisor Knott today. I had previously spoken to Supervisor Adams and said, hey, here's this great thing. And then I looked at the timing and I said, I don't know if this is going to work for this year. So the idea is to kind of have this always on the horizon. I'm going to kind of pick at this a little by little over the course of the next year. But when we get maybe like 3 to 6 months out from this going live, if we assume it's going to be next August again, taking a really hard look at, okay, what do we want to use this money for? How would that look? What would the implementation of that look like? One thing I'll say two things about this. One is HUD wants most applications to come from what they're calling priority areas. There are 3 different categories that they score to figure out the metric of if you're a priority area or not. Those areas can be counties or places, and places are cities, towns, not villages, cities and towns. Our county is not a priority area, so we immediately lose, quote unquote, 8 points from a 100 point application. You can get 2 points back if you can make a case that you have some pretty substantial affordable housing issues and barriers in your county.
Which we should be able
We
to
can't
do.
do that.
I'm pretty sure I can do that. The one thing I will say though is that there are 4 places in Columbia County that do rise to the level, and they are pretty interesting places. Not the city of Hudson, which would have been my first assumption. So let's see if I can please top of my head. Ghent applied. Ghent qualifies. Also, all of Ghent, the entire town of Ghent qualifies. The entire town. Yeah. Also, all of Ghent qualifies as a priority area for this grant.
Germantown.
All of Germantown.
Why does it qualify? Do you know?
So there are 3. I can send you the criteria. I need to figure out how to reverse engineer their math. It has to do with the availability of homes that are affordable to people at certain income levels, and I'm not quite sure how they figure this out. I need to break down their formulas. I might actually have to hit up Pattern for some help on that. But all of Ghent qualifies. All of Germantown qualifies. Copake, but just the hamlet.
Okay,
So just the hamlet of Copake. And then Claverack-Red Mills census designated place, which I assume is Philmont.
And for which
It's not.
program is it, Chris?
The light in Clover.
Oh, that's right. That's that that really tiny intersection.
It's a Clover post office.
Right.
Yeah.
For their area.
Yeah. So I mean, Claverack, that I think has 1,500 population just in that little kind of radius. So to me, this would make sense as a county level application, but if one of the smaller communities that qualifies wants to go after it, I mean,
It's a
more power
struggle
to you.
to see what those areas have in common. They seem so different. in
Yeah, it has
terms
to
of
do with-
economics, jobs, town centers.
yeah.
It's basically the ratio of affordable homes versus people at certain income levels. So if you're at 80% of AMI and there's only X amount of homes available to you, or X amount of Y amount of points.
Leave it to the federal government to come up with an algorithm like this or an equation like this.
I can't quite
And
figure it
the
out.
max award is per applicant, and each one of those 4 areas could be an applicant?
Yes, and this is actually, there's a typo in this.
Huh.
Last year's max award was 3 million. This year it's 7.
Ooh,
So
wow.
it's quite a bit more.
Actually, with you explaining it that way, I kind of get why
Yeah.
these are the places.
That's so interesting. is this, could this be used for the same thing that people are applying for the New York Forward grants for? You know, basically downtown revitalization?
Yeah,
So
there's,
this is federal funds that could stand in lieu of, Copac is applying for the downtown the New York Forward, the small downtown revitalization grant. And we haven't gotten it for 3 years in a row, so we're applying again. But if we don't, this is a possibility. It's all focused on the hamlet.
yeah, as long as, I mean, you basically need to make the case that whatever you're applying for will remove obstacles to housing, however you define those obstacles.
Chris, in Greene County, in Tannersville, they were one of the first who got that small town grant that you're just talking about. I'm sorry, I can't remember I couldn't see who was talking, but Tannersville would be good to visit. Sean Maloney is their town supervisor, and he did a lot of work, and he was one of the first people to get that small town revitalization, and Tannersville's done a really nice job, and he's always very open to talk to people about it. He'll even talk to people in Columbia County. Just kidding. But Tannersville, they've done some really great things there.
Is Sean at Casco Mountain Development Corporation?
Yes.
Okay, I think I know.
So we could also look at that in terms of, we're gonna have a much better view of the landscape, funding landscape by the time that rolls around again, and that might help us focus on what that means for the county in the event that we apply as a county.
Yeah, and when I looked at the previous winners, and they all kind of have, it's really nice, they've got profiles of, you know, this is what their application looked like, here's their statement of need, here are, you know, some of the metrics in their area. So they've got these really nice 2-page profiles of the awardees. All of them had been doing a significant amount of work on housing prior to winning the grant. Basically, this grant is it's kind of like the state's pro housing. If you were already doing some of this work on housing issues, you're much more likely to receive this award.
So are the 4 communities that we talked about that are priority areas by any chance pro housing? Have they taken the pledge or certification?
Well, Copac, Ghent. Who else did I say?
Germantown.
Flagrick and Germantown,
Ghent, and
no.
Flagrick.
Ghent and Copac, yes, but again, Copac is just a hamlet, so it's like a neighborhood of
But it
Copac.
counts.
But you're still pro
We're a
housing.
pro housing community. It's
Right, so
hard
the
to
town's pro housing,
see.
so is the hamlet.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we continue to work on the number of towns that are pro housing certified, and we expect with a focus on those 2 priority areas that are not certified, that'll help too.
Yeah, the tricky thing there is, so if you wanted to just focus on the areas that do have that priority area certification, you have to figure out who the applicant's going to be. You could, this is available to what they call multi-jurisdictional entities. So you could form a multi-jurisdictional entity just between those 4 areas. You'd have to have some sort of, at least an MOU in place. They're very different areas to me, aside from the need, right? Like I think the hamlet of Copac is pretty significantly different from Germantown writ large. But you could form some kind of, even like a temporary
That's what we did with
multi-jurisdictional
the broadband
organization.
grant.
Yeah.
Ghent was the lead on the broadband grant, but it served 4 towns. And we had MOUs with Ghent, and that was Ghent, Canaan, Lebanon, and Austerlitz.
Yeah, I think you could do something similar. I mean, there were areas that won this award without being one of the priority areas. The city of Milwaukee was the one that stood out to me the most. And it was crazy to me that they weren't a priority area. I don't know what these criteria are that has Milwaukee not one of the most severely housing distressed cities in the country. I read all those books.
What about that little one that you said was it in Oregon?
They have a priority status.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they've got a lot of tourism housing, is what we call that. AHOP, we've talked about this before. So AHOP, it's right now here. It's the Affordable Home Ownership Opportunity Program. This is rolling. This is open. This has been a priority grant for anyone that's been aware of it since it came out, just because the subsidy is so deep. So you can do anywhere between 4 and 100 units of new housing for this, again, specifically for home ownership, not for rental. But the subsidy is very deep. You get 150,000 or 200,000 per unit, depending on the AMI targets that you're going to sell to. You can get an additional $20,000 if you go full passive design or net zero. There's still a decent amount of funding left in this, so we really kind of a priority for this program would be actually finding a parcel, and then B, some willing developers to partner with on this particular grant. But this one remains a priority
And that's available constantly, right?
all the time
That's-
until the funds are expended.
Uh-huh.
Or committed, I should say.
Is that the one that Habitat's using?
I don't think they're actively using it.
Okay.
And this last one has a TBD. I sent an email to, let me see if it got replied to. It's a not, okay. I sent an email to HCR earlier today. This was part of the governor's budget. Earlier this year, the New York Housing for the Future, colloquially referred to as Mitchell-Lama 2.0. So there's $150 million total available under this program. There's two different pots of $75 million, one for rentals, one for homeownership. They both are for kind of limited equity or co-op ownerships or rentals. The interesting thing about this one is that unlike most affordable housing programs, this goes up to 130% of AMI. So, you know, blows past 80%, even past 100%. So this, you've got a larger potential field of, I guess, beneficiaries from this program. There's very little information about it. So aside from when the budget passed and there were a few articles that listed all of the housing programs that were in the budget, there's been no word on this. So I poked HCR today to see if, I imagine HCR will be the program administrators for this particular, or these two programs, but there hasn't been any news on it in the past 4 months now. So it might be something that we see in the spring. I think that's all my slides. 448, not too shabby.
Nice slides today.
There you
Wow,
go.
yeah.
Can you share those with us?
Yeah. I thought it'd be helpful to have everything in one spot instead of just, you know, kind of reciting a list of, here's all the money and here's all the programs.
Right.
Cool. Are there no questions?
Thanks for the good work.
Yeah, I think the numbers are just rolling around in our heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my
But
world.
there's a lot of opportunity out there, which is really good.
Yeah, I mean, this time of year is pretty intense, right?
Yeah.
We submitted the CDBG grant at the end of July. We submitted one of the mobile manufactured home replacement grants last week. There's another one due next week. And then the vacant rental improvement program grant application is due the first couple of days of October. And then there's the land bank capital funding. And then I can take a vacation.
Oh, good, yeah.
Right.
You want to take
It's
one. What can we tell desperate neighbors
That's fine.
about how soon there might be more housing built?
That's a great question. So any housing that's built with any of these programs, it's probably going to be at the earliest would be the tail end of next year, but more likely 2026. There are some, you know, there's a lot that I hear about that I can't really share just because it's real estate stuff, right? So there are some things out there. There's some pretty low-hanging fruit out there, honestly, in the real estate market. I mean, I can just talk about two of the properties that are available. There's 120 acres in Stockport on Route 9. That is actually a previously approved planned development district. So the initial pitch for that program, and you can see this on Stockport's zoning. If you go to Stockport's E-code, it's memorialized in Stockport's code as the Columbia Springs Planned Development District. So 120 acres bisected by the Empire State Rail Trail right on Route 9. The initial plan that basically received all of its approvals was for 111 total units. It was going to be 75 single-family homes on quarter-acre lots, which you typically don't see.
Yeah.
And then 36 townhomes. That parcel, because of it's not too far out of Greenport, it has all the water it needs, it has most of the sewer it needs. You would need to extend to make the townhouses happen. But it's got most of the infrastructure that you already need. And then those quarter-acre lots are huge. And then you'd only develop, I think with that proposal, they were developing about 42 acres and then leaving 78 in a conservation easement. So it's cluster housing,
Really good,
right? It's a cluster housing project. So that's out there. It's got a pretty high price tag on the parcel, but understandable because you can do a lot with it.
And it's pre-approved.
Yeah, I think it would have to go through the
That's
process
money in
again, but
But it's still
Yeah, the fact that it was approved once
Right.
is fantastic. And then there's another parcel in Germantown, much smaller, a tenth the size, 12 acres. That is in their Hamlet district. It has sewer but not water, so it needs some infrastructure. And that again it's on the market for about 600,000. And there's a plan that was never approved, but you can see the actual plan on the listing on LoopNet. And because it's a Hamlet district, there are smaller minimum lot sizes. They could get like 50 units on there. And that's right off of 9G. It's across 9G from the Germantown Central School District.
Wow.
So those are kind of the two, like, I don't want to call them subdivision developments, but those are the two bigger development opportunities that are out there in the county right now. And there are some smaller ones.
What about the one at 9 and 9H? I'm sorry, 66 and 9H in Cloudbrook?
Where Stewart's is?
Yeah, isn't that pre-planned?
Oh, you're talking about Amber.
Or
You're talking about the
housing?
Amdor ones.
Clover development.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know where he's at with that.
okay.
We're gonna talk to them in a bit. That's all I got.
Thanks.
Bob,
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.